Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Corselli. I'm the chairman and founder of Flya. Also the person who started Alexander Alternative Capital, a global macro hedge fund. I'm joined here today by my colleague, Jeremy Johnson.
Hello, everybody.
It's nice to meet you. Thank you for showing up and listening to us on a breaking topic that I'll be the first to admit I come from a traditional finance background, where we looked at earnings and, if earnings were greater than expenses, there was a profit made and you could value something based on profit. So Jeremy comes from a different background. I'm going to let Jeremy explain his background to you.
Sure. My background is more technology focused, digital technology. So a lot of the times I'm looking at things from the perspective of with the data, like what are people interested in? What are the trends online? What are people talking about on the social networks? And then I try to apply that to my understanding of financial markets.
So Jeremy and I have different backgrounds. We have different investment experience. I worked for UBS as a financial advisor, covering family offices, mostly raising assets and then building asset allocation models, selecting outside money managers to manage portfolios. That was like 80+% of the revenue of a successful wealth management practice that I built. My goal was to not make anybody rich, but not lose any of their wealth, right? It was to stay ahead of inflation. And, I wasn't looking for middle-class clients. I was looking for super rich. Jeremy, tell us about a little bit about what you actually invest in, which I find absolutely fascinating.
So what Michael's referring to is I purchase a lot of the investments through alternative investment platforms. So like Fundrise is a real estate platform. It's basically, they call themselves an E-REIT, and they invest in property around in DC and Los Angeles area. I've invested in wine. I've invested in art, like through Masterworks. I've invested in collectibles, Jerry Rice rookie card, which has gone up like 50% in value. I've invested in crypto, as well as traditional investments. But I think the ones that Michael's referring to are some of these alternative platforms that I've been using for about 3 to 5 years now.
So now, my background in like investing, I've invested in stocks. I've invested using fundamentals. I've used technical analysis. I've purchased bonds. I've purchased currencies. I've purchased futures. I've traded, rates. I've did futures, commodities. I've done physicals. I've lent money to people on luxury items. I've done construction loans. I've done, pipes. I've done over 80 IPOs. I've done over 125 secondaries. So I've done private, I've done public. After my UBS experience, I started a global macroeconomic hedge fund. So I did in 2015, 2016, I started to get a little bit timid because my traditional background was preventing me from taking any risk. So that's sort of the genesis of what's going on today. Just in 2015, my children bought their first stocks. I had them come into the office and do a research report. I opened up for them an UGMA account and funded it, and they bought their first stocks. And one of them bought Walmart, the other one bought Microsoft, the other one bought GameStop. So GameStop went out of business, so a bankrupt company. which I kept talking about over and 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 over again for 5 years. How the one with the highest IQ actually performed the worst in the stock market. So when I heard the stock was at $80 a share, I asked, did it do a reverse? Like, what was the reverse? 40-1? Like, how is it at $70? It was a $2 stock the last time I seen it, because I wouldn't let her sell it out of her account. I wanted her to to learn from her mistakes, which is an important factor in investing. Anyway, I sold it after hours at like $83, and the thing went to $400, as we're all aware. I would sit here today and say to you, I would do it all over again, right? And I'm not sure exactly where GameStop is trading, but I'm going to find out right now. GameStop today is trading at $171. So I left after it had a bad day, down 5.63%. I left like $90 on the table. If you look at it when it blasted into the 400 plus sphere, I left a lot more money on the table. But what is GameStop? Is it a healthy, thriving business? Jeremy?
No, not at all. But what it is it's a proxy. It's a representation of an idea. I assume so what we discuss here is that communities have value, and that wasn't necessarily measured before. And if a group of humans organize around an idea, they can will into existence something to be reality. And one could argue the Declaration of Independence was one of those events, right? I know it sounds like a stretch, but a group of people got together, they willed an idea into existence. And while the fundamentals of the stock don't make sense, people online organized and willed the value of GameStop to be higher. And I suppose what it represents is a group of people saying that they have a voice and that they have power, and they can't be controlled necessarily by the powers that be. And this is their vehicle of expression.
So you're saying that they used Reddit to basically squeeze the short sellers out of their positions?
Reddit was the organizational method or place where the organization occurred. GameStop was the vehicle through which they expressed their Occupy Wall Street like mentality to try to screw over Wall Street.
All right. So basically they took a company that failed to evolve, and it failed to remain profitable because it was losing money for 2 years. It was taking on massive amounts of debt onto its balance sheet. The stock price had been declining for 5 years. And they basically drove the market cap from $300 million up to $20 billion. And in the process, crushed a couple of like major hedge funds and major investors into hedge funds. And what surprises me is how the stock is held up after the fact. I tried to short the stock at $83. That's the part I left out. I would have bet, and I would have blown her whole account up. 4x shorting GameStop at 83. So
I think there's a part that's missing though. So I feel like because I come from a more technological background, maybe there's intangibles that I think that I can recognize that aren't seemingly getting value, and that's the value of the brand. And so GameStop as a brand to these 20-year-olds has a lot of significance. It was probably, it's before my time, but it was probably where they were buying their first consoles and their games. And that place represents a happy place for a lot of 20-year-olds. That was the place their parents took them, and they see or get a euphoric feeling from that brand. And so a narrative was created that the big bad Wall Street is beating up on a brand that this particular demographic, who is the largest demographic, holds near and dear. And so if there was going to be a knight or a saint that was getting martyred or represented, or people were going to fight for, I suppose GameStop fit the bill to be a brand that the masses would fight for.
So throw up the presentation
Sure.
that we put together. We slapped this together for you today pretty quickly. So everything that's been in the news the last 2 days is DWAC, Digital World Acquisition Corp. And the figure here is the Reddit figure from Wall Street Bets. This is who led the bear trap raid on Melvin Capital and some of the other big hedge funds that had concentrated short positions in the stock. How many people are in this Reddit group at this point?
Let me see if I can find that out.
For those of you that don't know what Digital World Acquisition Corp is, it's a SPAC. It basically, went public. It raised like $333 million.
11 million people.
11 million people are in this Reddit forum, basically saying, hey, I don't care about fundamentals. I care about like my memories of this brand. And I'm going to put my money in here and we're going to stick it to the big guy. We're going to have some fun along the way doing it. And we're going to have something to talk about. I mean, I like the way you sold me. I can't see that.
Okay, it's a meme basically of the Grim Reaper represented by DWAC, and he's knocking on the doors of Fox, Snapchat, and Twitter, and he's been killing them. And then he's knocking on Facebook's door to kill him.
So 2 days ago, DWAC trades on the NASDAQ, was trading at like $9. I think it closed the day at like $10.50. And, they basically announced a deal 11 o'clock p.m. like 2 nights ago to basically do a deal with Trump Media and Technology Group so that they could build out the Truth Social, which is an alternative to Twitter, Facebook, some of, I guess, Google's products, the Instagram. They're creating a different platform for social media. And I think that this thing has legs beyond just being a meme stock. I'm sure that some of you would disagree with that. But I think that this is something bigger than, a meme stock. I think it's represents a proxy for part of the country, to fight back on issues. And this transcends fundamentals, not in the exact same way as GameStop transcends, like, it being a bankrupt company that's loaded up with debt. But there's a bunch of millennials that, use technology to organize themselves and do a bear trap raid on the company. But it's almost a year later, and the thing's still at a $13 billion market cap. When GameStop was at that like $2-3 share. It was a micro cap company. It was about $300 million market cap, which was actually very similar to the size of DWAC when it started trading yesterday. So their market capitalizations were very similar in size. But let's talk about how investors today, they want to invest and they want to be entertained at the same exact time. It's no longer about studying PE ratios and market capitalizations and dividend growth and revenue growth and balance sheets and credit ratings, right? Those days for the time being are gone. Jeremy and I have been fighting for the last 6 months over these issues, and I'm publicly ceding that the tech guy is right. The finance guy that grew up, reading Peter Lynch's book, How to Beat the Street, is wrong. And the world has changed. Some of us are accepting it. Others are in complete denial. But the paradigms that we were used to, that I grew up in, at least for the time being, they need to be set aside.
Should we give a little context of what the premise of the argument is?
Well, sure, go for it.
So the premise of the argument is that technology will kind of run the world. It's more of a narrative-based game. It's more around organizations of people, information being flat. Anybody who tries to trade or seek an edge by withholding information, I think there are others who will seek to flatten that advantage because there's incentives that didn't occur before or that weren't around. You have these content platform channels like YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, who are now paying content creators sizable sums of income to keep audiences on the platforms for long periods of time. And so because of that, content creators who have the best takes or seem to be the most transparent are making sizable amounts of income on their platforms by educating their users about these difficult to understand topics. I also think the millennial audience seeks to be educated and wants to do things themselves more than outsourcing to a third party. We know somebody, Michael and I know someone personally who's a millennial, and this person seeks to want to be able to trade the options themselves as opposed to delegating that to a third party. And so some of the thinking that we've had is that financial professionals in general need to be aware that the market is shifting to where the customer wants to have more control. I think that's why the platforms are gaining popularity because they give the end user the at least appearance that they have more choice over the investment, and that the platform providers are educating and guiding you in the right directions, but you ultimately have more control over what you're investing in. I think that's why Robinhood has become more popular, as well as people want to gamble, let's just be honest. But I think the end users are looking, like Michael said, for fun. They're looking to have more control, and then they're looking to be educated about these difficult to understand topics so that then they can go on and try to do things on their own. The tech guy's perspective is that in the tech world versus the finance world, that the finance world is scarcity based because things were based on reality and physical items and physical assets. In the digital world, assets are infinite because anybody can create a digital item, digital piece of content, and that stuff can be created infinitely. And so from a technology perspective, there's no reason to hide info. You want to encourage information because it traps people on your platforms for longer periods of time. The more insights you can give to people, the longer you capture their attention. So it's no longer beneficial to withhold information or opportunities. The more you share opportunities and wealth with people, the more you trap them on your platforms, and therefore the more of that wealth they'll be willing to share with you as a platform owner.
So, Jeremy, as somebody who has, experience value in stocks, publicly traded securities, as somebody who's has experience in building the financial models that build portfolios and optimize portfolios using modern portfolio theory and Monte Carlo simulations. My experience causes me to just pull back, right? Now, what I've been doing is sharing that with the people in my network. I don't understand this. I don't get this. Why are people buying crypto? Why are they paying silly valuations for NFTs? Like, how is a digital photo, worth 600 grand?
Right.
Right. When you were just the one saying that in digital, it's infinite. Right. So what I'm trying to do is learn through people that are more in tune and more in touch with these things. And this has been it's been a very painful process for me,
So
because I used to be the guy that understood, why the tech stocks were going up and, how to play them and which ones to play. But today I don't get what's going on. Right.
I think you brought up a good point with everything being infinite, but I think the piece you're missing is the word that's often used by a lot of these younger people, which is clout. And that comes from being the person that discovered the idea, the person who created the first piece of content. So what blockchain allows people to say, hey, I am the originator of this idea that caught wind. And that gives this person an online reputation or clout or points towards it that gives them the attention when they speak online in online portals, because they were the original source of breakthrough ideas. They're going to continue to get more attention as they continue to post.
All right. So I have some very smart friends that are on this webcast with us today, that have a lot of experience. They're, very well educated, and they've analyzed a lot of opportunities during their careers.
Right.
And some of them have actually received awards for this.
Right. That's a form of clout.
Nobody wants to read their research.
So that's about
nobody wants to, again, nobody wants to read their 3, 5, 10, 20-page research reports on companies.
Right.
Like doing a holistic up and down view of, what the real opportunities and risks are and the earnings. And they'd rather look at, this Donald Trump kid up here that, the young version of Donald Trump that's a meme on, on Reddit, than an actual research report. Or they'd rather buy based off of Elon Musk tweeting a rocket ship with a dog on it.
So I think some of it, I don't think that that's necessarily true, that people aren't willing to read long research. I think some of it is the use of technical jargon as opposed to analogies. It's not the most efficient way to communicate. If you're communicating to only PhDs, of course, I remember, all right, so let me take a step back. My father worked for the newspaper company. And I remember one day when I was like 10, he asked me, what level was the newspaper written on? And I said something like, I don't know, like 10th grade. And he was like, no, it's written on a 4th grade level. And I was baffled. I didn't understand it. And he told me that they write it in general terms so that a wider cross section of the population can understand it. And so I think what really, really smart people have to recognize is the when you're communicating, it's more important to be able to communicate to all education levels if you want an idea to really persist and really go viral. What a lot of the people online who do really well are able to do is take very complicated topics and boil those down into analogies that wider groups of people can understand. They're also doing it in format. So if someone goes to do a video, and there was a lot of ways we could have selected a title for this presentation, but we selected one that was going to create some emotional response on purpose. And so a lot of things have to be, you have to make things interesting. You have to make your presentation elicit some degree of emotional response. That's what's going to get people interested.
So is DWAC a meme stock?
I mean, so I think some of the let's just lay out what we define as some of the meme stocks. We would say AMC, we would say GameStop, we would say Dogecoin, while not a stock, is a meme, let's say, investment asset. We'll do all of them. I'd say Tesla. I'd even say Apple was one of the earlier ones. What I personally define as a meme stock or a stock having meme characteristics is A, having community around it, B, having the components to make it like social media interesting, it having components where people are going to love or hate it, anything that's drawing out a strong emotional reaction, and then anything that's going to garner a lot of news around it. I would say Bitcoin also is kind of a meme financial asset. I think a stock operated by representing a company with Donald Trump, it has community, whether people agree with Trump or not. No one can deny that a sizable portion of the population really likes this person. No one can deny that Trump creates ratings, whether good or bad.
So he's like a Howard Stern.
He's like a Howard Stern.
You may love him, you may hate his guts, but
right,
you're listening longer.
We call it the attention economy. So because the content that he puts out garners attention, that equals value in the digital world.
So he's basically making you tune in.
He's making you tune in, even if you hate him. You know,
is there a difference between love and hate when it comes to attention?
I mean, I think they both are intense attention. So from a computer's perspective, I mean, I don't write algorithms to fully understand with the computer, how it's deciphering or receiving that information, but I would assume it's interpreting love and hate as pretty similar forms of attention.
How about from an advertising cost perspective? Is there a difference between an audience that loves what they're showing up for or an audience that is showing up to just see a train wreck?
Again, it's probably seen very similar by a computer. It's intense amounts of attention for long periods of time with lots of sharing and lots of comments. But the bigger point I was going to get at about the Nobel laureates is that a lot of that communication is one way. And so it excludes the opinions and the challenges of third parties. And I think what these platforms do really well is some smart person puts out an idea, but it's put in like the battlefield, and in the battlefield anybody can fight the heavyweight champ, and so sometimes the heavyweight champ of ideas might take a knockout blow that helps the heavyweight champ to make the idea better. I think that's what was missing before, is the ability to communicate in alluring and emotion driven ways, or to elicit emotions, but then also the feedback of people challenging the idea to see how strong it actually is. And I think that's the difference now between a Redditor posting an idea and the previous forms of one-way communication.
Like a newspaper.
Like a newspaper. And then the authors of that content didn't have to consider the contra comments that will be created from their controversial idea. Now, anybody creating content has to anticipate the contra ideas that they're going to receive as soon as they hit send on these or publish for their messages. And I think that changes the nature and makes things a lot more collaborative.
Got you.
It also attaches emotions to because there's young kids, they're arguing about Tesla or ARC ETFs, like they act like they're sports teams now.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Is this a investment or is this a political statement? Buying DWAC.
I think that, like you mentioned before, there's three types of people. There's people who will look at this and say, I like Trump and I don't care. I'm just going to buy. I'm just going to buy. I'm just going to buy. I have to imagine that he's going to use this as some form of marketing if he runs again. So there's going to be a group of people who just buy, just like they buy the red hats and all the paraphernalia. Here's just another way that I think that there's some people out here, which is a community, that will show their support.
Is it a big community? Does he have a big community?
When I looked on Twitter, he used to have 85 million followers. I mean, even if you're
how many followers are on Twitter itself?
Let's look that up.
Is it 300 million or something like that?
Let's see.
So this new Truth Social, that's
206 million.
206 million active users, but I think they have over 300 million users on the platform. So he had 84 million
That's
Twitter
incredible.
followers.
Wow.
So like, can he move a significant portion? Because at the end of the day, where DWAC becomes a real stock, in my eyes, is when it starts creating real earnings.
Right.
Right. And until that actually happens, it's a fugazi.
Yeah. It's an idea.
Ever created.
Now, you mentioned before when you looked at how it was financially engineered, it was like, you said it was almost like they looked at some of these previous meme stocks and structured it around that.
I believe that it was engineered to pop, to go up, to create wealth. If you compare it to some of the other SPACs that are out there, it was priced in a way not to hurt the buyer and overly benefit the sponsor. So, maybe there's some people here that disagree with that comment. But if you look at the number of warrants, you look at the dilution, from a purely financial perspective, and you ignore the fact that there's no real company there, it was, I think, structured very fairly for the investor. And I think it was structured in a way so that people could make some cash.
Which is very interesting. Because when you look at things like crypto that rally and people being used to, things moving 20, 30, 40% at a time, it's very unusual for a stock to do that. But it's interesting that if it was engineered like that, they knew the type of news flow that would be generated from this.
Jeremy, did you buy DWAC? We got to get a full disclosure here.
I did buy some yesterday.
Oh, nice. What price did you get in at?
$12.
Wow, you were early. So, what are some of the other uses of this ticker symbol? Right. So, like I always say that the Dow Jones Industrial Average is like the everyday man's proxy for how well the economy's doing. So if the Dow is screeching to new highs every single day, everyday person basically says, hey, the economy's good. And it gives them confidence to spend, confidence to do things that they might not do. It's a barometer, right?
Some of the initial things that come to my mind could be, the most obvious one would be likelihood of a Trump running again. think that's the most obvious, but the one that just popped in my head was this could be a contra to the social media stock. So if Facebook has, you know, regulatory threats, this could potentially be a proxy for Facebook going down or losing business.
All right, what is it? Is it possible it's a proxy for the war on big tech?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at.
So, you know, you grew up in Virginia, correct?
Yep.
And you've been involved in politics.
Yep.
You've helped a couple of high-level campaigns.
Yes.
All right. So you understand the political game, which to finance people it's a pretty toxic conversation to get into.
Yeah.
But is this a, you know, blue versus red proxy? Can you be a Democrat and buy DWAC?
I think so. I think there's people out there who will just say, hey, it looks like it could have some attention, represent a new opportunity. It could be a proxy for political spending. Why not? They might totally disagree with what it personally stands for on a personal level, but I think they could step back and say, logically, if we are in an attention economy, and if there is a war on the big social media platforms, and this particular platform is picking up steam, you know, I could also see Reddit going public and having a similar feel, like where you almost have the clean social media networks that are more organized and more corporate, and then kind of the more free for all social media networks like a Reddit and potentially this DWAC, where it's kind of like anything goes and people making them kind of the yin and yang.
So Jay, what is the deal with politicians, you know, on the Democratic side? Are they in love with big tech?
I think both sides actually dislike big tech. And I saw an article the other day where like several senators sent Facebook a cease and desist about a crypto wallet that they're releasing. And Facebook has a stable coin that they want to put out. And Facebook seemed to say, too bad, we're putting it out anyway because it's a separate company. I don't think Washington in general is going to take very well to Zuckerberg kind of like, you know, telling them, I don't care, I'm going to do what I want. And so I can see the investigations from both sides starting to ratchet up. Now, on the other side, politicians love using social media platforms to deliver their ads. So I guess it's a double-edged sword, but I think politicians want to ultimately show large companies that they have the real power.
Does the Taliban have a Twitter account?
That I don't know.
I think they have a Twitter account.
Really?
Yeah. So this isn't a,
let me look it up.
You know, this isn't a Democrat versus Republican argument. This is free speech.
Right.
As you're looking that up, why don't you move the slide to the one that sort of talks about were you able to get that screenshot from the ACLU?
Oh, I can pull that up. So let me stop sharing and I'll find that and add it back in.
So the ACLU, I don't think is in love with Donald Trump. You know, I think that they're pretty against them, but on this argument, they're on the same side, right? And there's an article on the like front page of their site. And what I'm thinking is this becomes a proxy for the fight, a nonpartisan proxy pushback on censoring people in social media, right? Um, so,
There it is.
so this is right off their, this is right off their website. You go to ACLU's website, right? I mean, this when I seen, I was, you know, I was moved by it, um, because I see people on both sides of the aisle that are getting increasingly upset, you know, with censoring. And there's also a lawsuit that's been filed against them. And there's two election cycles. There's an election cycle coming up here very shortly. There's an election cycle coming up 2 years
Next year.
Next year, sorry. So I think that similar to the stock market being a barometer for the general health of the economy, that, you know, a ticker like this, similar to the volatility index being a proxy for fear in the market, or lack of fear in the market, that this ticker symbol has more significant representation than the earnings per share. And, you know, even though the valuation of it is detached completely from reality, I think that it could be the greatest meme stock of all time. And I think it has the potential to become a real business. And I think it has a potential to become a real business because it's an alternative to the existing businesses that are actually there. So
there's definitely on both sides, people are seemingly growing tired of the power that, like, a Facebook. I think Facebook represents enemy number one by the day. I would definitely say there seems to be people like, you know, you saw that Facebook looking at changing their name. They're claiming it's because they want to be seen as a metaverse company. But I thought a long time ago they should change their name to Instagram to shake off some of the negativity attached to Facebook. But I think that there's like a growing global like animosity developing against that company with some of their practices. And I personally believe in a few years we're gonna hear a lot of news about the amount of bots and fraud that they have been doing with their ads. But that hasn't seemed to catch wind yet. But I've definitely seen several articles talking about significant levels of bot traffic masquerading as clicks and real users on the site. And at some point, I think someone's going to do a real investigation to how big of a problem that's been.
So with that said, you know, we're supposed to go till 2:00, but I'm getting tired and hungry. Jeremy, is there anything else you want to cover before we end?
No, I'd just like to thank everybody for showing up. Tell us if you think we're idiots, or tell us if you think that it was interesting. We appreciate everyone's feedback.
Yeah, and share your thoughts with us as well. Like, you know, we have no intellectual copyrights on any of this stuff. It's unfolding in real time. We're trying to understand it better, and we're trying to share our thoughts back and forth with a community that's tuned into the same vibration, the same conversation, and understand the paradigm shift that everybody senses that happened underneath each of us. So please reach out to us. You have our emails. If you want to speak at some of our events, you want to participate in some of our conversations, we're always open to that. You know, we're not trying to sell you anything. You know, this is a commercial platform. We're using it to have a, you know, an open discussion with like-minded people. And if that's your purpose, you know, join us.
So we got a question on the chat, Mike.
Okay.
Alyssa says, what would you tell a client who wants your valid opinion on whether or not they should buy DWAC? Sorry, getting on this late.
We don't give financial advice.
Yeah.
You know, I was telling my kids yesterday to buy it. They didn't listen, and then they wanted to buy it today. I take them to school in the morning, and you know, I told them, look, I'm not going to give you any recommendation of whether you should buy it at, you know, 83, 73 bucks a share, because I have absolutely no clue which direction it's heading. But the way that I've personally been participating in these things that's going up is I take a little bit of money each day, and I put it in, right? And I put it in when it's high, I put it in when it's low, and I dollar cost average into these, like, you know, super crazy ideas. It's my only way to participate, because I'm having a hard time understanding. So please do not take any financial advice from Jeremy or myself. We're not registered financial advisors. We have no real opinions on DWAC and whether or not you should buy the stock or the warrant. So we didn't come here to sell you the stock. We came here to have a conversation with you about, like, this paradigm shift from, you know, fundamentals to entertainment. So we hope you were entertained. And if you have some entertaining investment ideas that you'd like to share with us, we won't hold it against you. And we hope that you don't hold it against us. Have a great day.